Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming and choosing to spend part of your Friday afternoon with us. We've been talking about this show for a long time, and I did not want to put it off again because I know from your comments that this is such a personal topic to so many of you. So, I know there's a prisoner hunt going on right now. I know there's this guy who's escaped into the woods of Pennsylvania, and it's a horrible story, and a lot of people are watching that. And I know that some people are waiting for the Ruby Franke hearing, which they're all waiting in on another channel, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So I do plan on covering Ruby Franke tomorrow. I have a lot of information on it, and we're going to do a full-on catch-up of Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt tomorrow because I know that you guys all want to see that. But since we have Meredith here today, and I know that, we want to hear from her and we want her to answer our questions. I don't want to put this off anymore. That prisoner, if he gets caught, he's going to get caught. If he doesn't get caught, he's still going to be there an hour from now when we're done. So you can always go back to that. And that said, I know it's hard. I know it's hard because I always like to be the first one to give breaking news. But because we have Meredith here today, we want to be respectful and have her answer questions. So if there is any breaking news and you want to go watch it, that's great. Just don't put it in the chat because it's kind of distracting. And then it gets everybody, chattering about that. And then we're not really talking about what we're here to talk about. And this is such an important topic. I know that a lot of you agree with me on that. So my friend Meredith Beardmore is a therapist. She wrote a book. It's called Hey Addiction, Thanks for Nothing. And without further ado, I'm going to bring her on right now so that she can introduce herself to you.
Hi. Oh my gosh, Melanie. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. I just want to tell everyone how we met, which is kind of crazy.
Yes, please do.
So Meredith is also a YouTuber. She has a channel called Mend with Mare, and she'll tell you about that. And I linked in the description a link to her channel so you can subscribe to that. But I am a huge music lover, and I, when I get sad, I go looking for certain songs on YouTube's and videos and stuff. And I was looking for a certain Taylor Swift video, and I typed in the name of the song, and I guess there's not an official video for that song. No. And your video came up, which it was a reaction video. A therapist reacts to Taylor Swift's Better Man, actually was the name of the song.
We should just, because it actually ties into this book. My reaction, why it caused me to have such a strong reaction is because, this book was written before a lot of other things went down, but, Better Man has a lot to do with it.
It does. And the lyrics, and I'm a big lyric person, and I think in song lyrics, which is so weird. Like I'll just be in a mood and something will be happening and like a song will pop into my head with the exact lyric of the way I'm thinking. I don't know if anybody else does that. If anybody in the chat has that same, is it a disorder? I don't know. I actually think it's a gift, quite honestly.
I think it's a gift.
Yeah.
But I do it constantly. Some people who aren't really into music and aren't emotionally tied to lyrics, they don't feel like this, I don't think.
Really?
But I constantly, even in my own therapy sessions, and I can't tell still if my therapist is like a Swiftie or not. And so I'm always like, well, there's this lyric like on the precipice, but and like, and I go, that's how I feel right now. And she just is kind of like, like it's like everything. Funny, right? Yeah, I have everything goes to a lyric for me. Almost
me too.
Always. So,
and I'm a deadhead. Yeah. For my entire childhood, since the time I was 13 years old, I followed the Grateful Dead around the country. Wow. And in fact, I went to college in Boulder, Colorado. Go Buffs.
There's my sign over there. Go Buffs. Boulder. Yeah.
Because it was close to Red Rocks, which is a great concert venue because the Grateful Dead were, and I thank the Grateful Dead literally for showing me parts of the country that I never would have seen before.
Wow.
Because once I found my tribe in Boulder, that's what we did. We went on tour and we would jump in someone's car and we would drive from Boulder. One summer we went from Boulder to Telluride to Park City to Irvine, California to Tempe, Arizona. We did a whole summer tour. And it was a place for me, which is when I look at my kids who love Taylor Swift and other
Mhm.
Phoebe Bridgers and people like that,
Yeah.
that it was
So
a
good.
community. The
Yes.
Deadhead community, the Grateful Dead concert was a place where there was just overwhelming acceptance and happiness.
Oh,
And I had never seen so many people smiling
that's
about the same
beautiful.
thing at the same
Yeah.
time. And for me, and we'll just divert for 1 second while we wait for some people to come in.
Yeah.
Um, for me, the Grateful Dead would go on tour in the fall and in the spring. And so I would always have, no matter what was going on in my life, whether
Mhm.
it was adolescence or being a teenager or going to college, getting a job, getting married,
Mhm.
having kids, getting divorced, I could
Oh,
always count on fall tour and spring tour
oh,
as
yeah.
like a reset button
Mhm.
to bring me
Mhm.
back to good, to quote
Yes.
another song by Matchbox 20, by the way, Back to Good, which is another song, but we digress. Anybody else in the chat can relate to
I f
this,
Yeah,
chime
yeah.
in.
I already s I that Matchbox 20 song that's in Barbie Land or Barbie. Yeah, I finally saw Barbie. It was really good. But at first I was like, "Wait, why is that song attached to?" And then I was like, "That's why. That's why." It's
Push.
so good.
Yeah,
Push.
push. And you know what? Rob Thomas, who's the lead singer of Matchbox 20, was so flattered when they chose to use his song. And I mean, he
Mhm.
should actually be really happy now because I'm sure it's pushed that thing up in the charts.
Yes.
The
Yes.
Ryan, who plays
Mhm.
Ken
Gosling. Ryan
Gosling. I get the
Gosling.
Ryans confused, Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Gosling, because
Oh
they're
my
both so,
gosh. They're
cute.
so cute. Delicious.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give
So
you the
cuties.
floor now and tell
Oh,
everybody a little bit about your professional qualifications, and then we'll take it from there.
okay. All right. So, gosh, it's weird to talk about myself, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. So I am a licensed mental health counselor, but here in New York, we call them psychotherapists. So I am a psychotherapist license. I used to have my license also in Ohio. I went to yes, the Ohio State University. And while I was there during my internship, I worked in the counseling center at OSU. So I got to work alongside a lot of psychologists, social workers. It was really integrative and wonderful. Psychiatrists, just immersed in all of it. But it really developed my love for the college age population. I just, it's such a unique time in your life where you really are trying to figure out who you truly are. And that's kind of the focus I went into whenever after I graduated. I did work in Astoria, New York, in a community like counseling center with like people of lower socioeconomic status, and it was, a just a very very tough position, but it got me ready to um, go into straight into what I have really wanted to do, and that's to stay focused on that college age. Um, so I also have a lot of experience. My practicum took place at a women's intensive outpatient program in Ohio. And I also have the experience of seeing my sister go through her drug addiction concerns. And so that also played a part into this. And then that led me to Iona College, where I was hired as the alcohol and other drugs coordinator there. And so I was really in charge of a lot of different things, but I was a therapist, so I would work with different students, but anyone who had violated alcohol or a drug, had an alcohol or drug violation, they would have to come to me for counseling. And
Oh,
yeah,
poor
yeah.
kids that had to come to someone as empathetic and kind and sweet as you for counseling. I
Yeah,
mean, a mandatory requirement with Meredith.
super
That would
required with
that would
me.
actually be a fun appointment to have to go to every week, if you ask me.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, they were put through a lot, but I feel like I had a lot of resources and connections, and I got them. Like, one of the things that I'm trained in is motivational interviewing, and that's something that is specific to addiction counseling. So I feel like it's something like when I learned that that's the title of the therapeutic technique was I was like, I just do this as a naturally. So it was like a very comfortable spot for me to be in. Just being like, okay, so no big deal. I'm not judgmental. You took 10, someone took 10 Xanax and like said that they didn't really feel much. And then I was like, okay, so what's the hard part of that? Like, what was the negatives? And they're like, nothing, and so we just like working through all of that. And it's really beautiful how people can finally, like, I looked at my job as helping them just like see the dysfunction, see the addiction, because sometimes people are just they're not coming to me because they're like, yeah, I have a problem, please help. They're
Right.
coming like, nothing's wrong.
I think
Like, I have some
a lot of times people go to therapy so that someone will tell them that they're not the crazy one. I mean, especially when they're involved with someone who's an alcoholic, right? Or an addict. I think that, I think
right?
you start to feel so crazy after a while that you're just like, I need someone to tell me that I'm not crazy. Yes, please hold up the book and
That
read
is
the title.
why. So it's "Hey Addiction, Thanks for Nothing." Sometimes I think I should have been nothing and everything because it did free me in a lot of ways, but, it's a brutally honest guide to loving an addict without losing your mind, because you feel like you're losing your mind when you love someone with an addiction issue, like, for so many different reasons. It depends on, like, what stage they are, but if they're in denial and they wanna keep doing what they're doing, I mean, they will do anything, tell you any lie. They will use any tactic to get what they want. And it's sometimes not even exactly personal. And I think that that's another thing that we might do as loved ones of addicts, is take it like really personally, like, how could they? But it's like their mind is so just like zero end. And I'm not making excuses for them by any means,
Mhm.
because they're choices that they make. But they're so focused on what they want, they don't think about the consequences in the moment. And they don't, a lot of times the loved ones were just collateral damage. It's like we
Yeah.
cannot get they
We'll get into that deeper, and I know that there's a
Mhm.
lot of people who are gonna wanna talk about that and, have questions about that, and
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit, briefly, about growing up in your house and because I read your book twice. I have it highlighted. I
Amazing.
think that this is going to be a book, and I linked to the description below. It comes out on, September 15th,
Yep, next
right?
Friday, week from
So
today.
you can pre-order the book. I have the link below, but I will tell you that I have the digital copy of this book. I've highlighted it, and it's one of those books that I would keep on my nightstand and keep referring
Thank
back
you.
to for, validation that, because what you talk about in the book of how to handle these situations is
Mhm.
something that I think people need to hear and feel validated about, because it's really hard. So tell everybody a little bit about what you dealt with growing up, and I wonder, did that shape your career path at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. And for a while, I wasn't happy about it, that it did. But so growing up, it was really difficult because when my sister's addiction occurred, when we're talking 20 some years ago, addiction, I mean, it still has like this stigma attached to it, unfortunately, and that causes people not to talk about it. So my parents are very private people, and when my sister had her issues with drug addiction, which, just so everybody knows, she wrote a little opening in the book saying that she is okay with me talking about this. I'm not breaking her confidentiality or anything like that. But she, seeing how it just became all consuming. It was like a vacuum, a tornado. I mean, it just every single day we were living in fear. And I was young. I was 15, 16, 17. So I was in high school, and all my parents were just consumed in it and trying to, I call it DAG in the book. It's daily analyzing group. So it was just like every day it's like, well, should we take her access to money away? Well, but if we do that, then she might put herself in a compromising situation with like a drug dealer. But then if we do give the money, then that could cause this X, Y, and Z. And it was like, it was like playing chess every day of our lives. And it was all consuming. And so then that led to me being like just wanting to do everything to prove to my parents, like, you're good parents. You did all that you could do. This doesn't look at me. Like I was like wanting to be like perfect, the good student and involved in everything. And it just caused a lot of dysfunction until it came to a halt. But, it just became ingrained in me. And I definitely was very like hyper vigilant all the time with like, how is everybody? What's going on? Just like constantly engulfed in it. I mean, it just takes over your life and the family life. And the
Yeah.
frustrating part, like why I get so pissed, oh, excuse my language, why I
That's
get so
people
why
have said
I get
far worse on this
so
show.
okay, good, good. Why I get so angry is because it's always about the addict. Like, and I
Right.
get it. They're dealing with something that is horrible, but we, the loved ones, are also dealing with something horrible because we are fearful of the worst happening. And so you're always living in the future and worrying about what could happen. How do I protect this person? And it just, it's not, it just is it just is unfortunate that all of the focus is on the addict. And when I went to go find resources and books to support me to be like, how do I handle all of this? I was not happy with the options out there.
Right.
And
I mean,
that's
there's
why,
not a lot of
yeah,
there's not a lot of self-help information about it. I mean, Al-Anon is a
no,
great resource if you can get to meetings and,
yes, the number
pre-lockdowns,
one,
pre-COVID, there were no, there was only in-person meetings. There was no virtual meetings, right?
right,
They didn't have Zoom.
right.
They didn't have any of that stuff. So in order to
Mhm.
really have a support group, you had to show up at meetings. You had to, physically be there, which is hard for a lot of people. And, like
Yeah,
you said, because there's so much shame and guilt involved around alcoholism and addiction, not
yeah,
only for the alcoholic or addict, but also for the family members. It's something that, you might want to go 3 towns over for if you were going to go to a meeting
exactly.
because you didn't want to run into anybody that you were going to know
Yeah,
because it was not something, and I think it's still not something that is
yeah.
openly discussed. And
Mm-mm.
I think what you're talking about, the family dynamic that totally shifts because the ripple effects are so enormous. Because when you have an alcoholic um, in your family or an addict, either a parent or a sibling or
Mhm.
a grand or someone that lives in your house, let's say
Grandparent,
on the day to
yeah,
day,
yeah,
it affects everyone. And what you're saying and what I read in your book kind of broke my heart because it was like
yeah,
your teenage years were consumed
yeah.
with what was going on with your sister's
Mhm.
addiction and
Yeah,
how that pulled focus really away from you
yeah.
um, is heartbreaking. But that was your normal, right? So
Mhm.
when
Yeah.
you grow up in a situation like that and that becomes
Mhm.
your normal, it kind of shapes you maybe for the rest of your life, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in ways that I didn't anticipate. And part of the reason why I wrote this book was to help myself understand how I got myself back in a situation of loving an addict with my soon to be ex-husband, because I felt as if I was very intentional about choosing someone who didn't have issues with alcohol or drugs. Um, and
Yeah, well,
for
you want to break the pattern, right? You're trying to break the pattern.
yes, yes. And but I do want to say my sister did have a therapist, and my sister has been clean, ever since. And we're lucky. Like our family is lucky that she came out alive and is doing okay. Because there's so many people, especially in our town, that has, I mean, southeastern Ohio has had like major issues with heroin and meth, and I mean, so much. Um, so we were very lucky, and I got to see the positive effects though of therapy, which was stored in the back of my mind, but it wasn't until somebody else said that I would make a good therapist that I actually was like, oh, maybe I should consider this. But um, I was in what I felt was an amazing relationship for 8 years, 8.5 years, and then the pandemic hit, and they were out of work. We had a small child. I was working more than ever. and he started to drink. And I had no idea how quickly alcohol and drugs can take somebody down and change them in the way. I mean, I did know because I've seen it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I watched
Right.
it, I witnessed it and grew up with it. But I thought, since like, okay, you made these choices and you were intentional about the person you were with and believed to be aligned on a lot of things, and then you're no longer, I mean, the amount of trauma, the pain that it brought up, that was so unresolved. And so when I was trying to make sense of it, and also the shame of being a therapist and going through it. A therapist that that wasn't used to be, because I moved into private practice, but used to be an alcohol and other drugs coordinator. Like,
right.
The assumption, and I've had people say like, oh, that sucks because aren't you a therapist? Don't you specialize in substance abuse? And it's like not knowing that if someone doesn't want to change, they're not going to change. It doesn't matter what your job title is.
We think we can
Oh, I
change
did.
them.
Oh,
We think
yes.
we can. That's the thing.
Total savior
Right?
complex right here. I was like, if I do this and if I introduce them to that person, I get them into that program. If I say this, but then it led to pleading and crying and raging, and just to try to get them to, because they couldn't see what I was seeing. And I was infuriated. It was so hard. I mean, I finally am like at some bit of peace, but what I never want to live through that again.
Yeah.
So
and,
horrible.
you know, it's interesting that you say that you made a conscious decision, you know, to not marry that kind of person, you know, not marry that kind of person, but not marry someone with an addiction, because you had seen how it breaks apart families, you know, and you had a child together. And then, you know, where are my tissues? I'm just going to tell you guys, you might want to get some tissues if this is.
I know,
really
I feel it a little bit. It's like, it's right there.
I had them, but no, they're not here. But, you know, when you grow up in a house like that, there's so many things that you know rang so true with me, because after I started watching after that Taylor Swift video, I did like a deeper dive into your YouTube channel, and I found some early videos that you did before you kind of morphed into this therapist reacts to music videos thing about addiction and loving an addict. And I think I told you, I'm like, this is just, I can't even get through. It was like, I didn't even know how long the video was, 10, 15 minutes. I couldn't finish it. I had to do it in pieces because it was so personal. And so it brought up so many emotions that it was just, it's hard. It's hard to talk about. And I think that unless you have been through it, people just don't get it. They just don't understand. And I think it, you know, what is also so hard to understand is that when you're watching someone that you love literally killing themselves right in front of you every single day without seeming to care about the ripple effects on the family, on the children, on everyone who comes into contact with them on a daily basis, it's like almost like their feelings and have been just so numbed, right, by alcohol or whatever substances that it's just it's so hard for someone who doesn't have an addiction to be able to understand what the F they're thinking about. Like, what are you like? How could you not see this? How could you not see what your behavior is doing to us? How could you not see? Isn't it, if you loved us enough, wouldn't you just stop? Why can't you just stop? Like, why is the choice so hard for you to make? Like, you are going to destroy this family. And I know that you eventually gave your ex-husband an ultimatum. A lot of people say that ultimatums don't work. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all and what your breaking point was.
I mean, the ultimatum in the book wasn't the final ultimatum.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So maybe you don't even want to talk about that because I didn't get the final version.
I mean, no, that's not totally. And I don't, when I wrote, this is also, I'm like, in this present moment, I can feel myself trying to protect him.
Yes, yes. And don't
when
we
it's
do
like,
that too? Don't we make
right?
excuses for them? And don't we turn down invitations to go places or to go to social events because you don't know which version of this person you're going to get. And you
Mhm.
don't know if they are going to embarrass themselves, embarrass you, say inappropriate things,
Yeah.
do something crazy. So you become maybe a little bit more isolated and you're not doing all of the
Yes.
things that you would want to do
Mhm.
because you're trying to manage someone else's behavior.
It's all focused on them, and then you start to look at yourself, and it wasn't just internally of being like, "Who am I?" On the outside, I mean, I look haggardly, like I had aged years because it just was so, because you can't believe that this is actually happening. You don't know how to manage it, and you also don't want it to happen. Like, the last thing I would want ever is to have my family be broken up in this way. But when you have a partner that thinks you should trust them when they say that they're really good driving drunk,
Right. Right.
I mean, it's like there's like a level of like, you're just like, how am I supposed to reason with this?
Right.
Like, it's this, there's nothing, no therapeutic technique in my arsenal that I can pull out to like suddenly change this. And
Right.
honestly, I mean, I've wasted countless hours even just like engaging and debating and trying to explain when somebody wasn't even, and like the next day won't even remember the conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and so you
And
don't
then
even know what
try to
reality you're
gaslight
in.
you into thinking that you were crazy because that didn't really happen.
Mhm.
Oh no, that didn't really happen. That's not what happened
No,
last night. I didn't say that to you.
no.
What are you talking about? You're crazy.
Yeah. And I'm the downer. I
Yeah,
mean, and
right.
also sucked though too, and because they're going so far in that direction that I had to like overcompensate, I feel like, and be just like the the sole parent, the sole responsible person, and I didn't have any room for joy, for anything that I liked. It felt like everything was just sucked out of me, and it was, um, I just, I didn't want to raise my son in a house like that. Like, I just,
And
you know,
also how it turns you into the worst version of
worst
yourself.
version,
The worst
worst.
version of yourself. You turn into a detective because now it turns into they say they're not drinking or taking the Oxycontin or
Mhm,
whatever because we can't ignore
mhm.
the huge opioid crisis and how
Yes, my
people
sure.
become addicted to
Yeah,
opioids so quickly
so
after
quick.
having a surgery that maybe they're prescribed for
Mhm. Yep,
or Oxycontin is heroin in pill form. It
yep.
is. It just is. That's the
Mhm,
facts. People don't come for me in the comments. It is.
mhm.
And it is killing so many people in this country.
Some,
Now that fentanyl is here, that might take over. But for so
yeah.
many years, it was OxyContin. And if
Mhm,
you want to watch some great TV about that, Dope Sick is a phenomenal um, series
mhm.
with Michael Keaton as a doctor who eventually becomes addicted to OxyContin, and it goes into depth about the the company that manufactured on OxyContin and the lengths that they went to go to these small mining towns to get everyone in these small mining towns addicted, and how
Yep.
they told the doctors that it was not addictive. It's not like Percocet. People aren't going to become addicted, and they knew that they would, and they
Yeah.
kept increasing
Mhm.
the dosage of the pills that they were making, and it's fascinating and horrifying at the same
Horrifying.
time.
Mhm.
But when you start becoming a detective, and you're finding the bottles, and then you're replacing the vodka with water, and you're
Yep.
dumping out pills,
With a
and you're
ruler.
hiding
Measure.
things, and you're taking car keys, and you're
Mhm,
hiding the car keys,
mhm.
and the lies, and
Yeah,
it becomes a game almost to try and catch them in a lie, and to
yeah,
try and you know oh, I know
yeah.
they're lying, so now I got to go prove it. Right now, I got to
Mhm,
prove it.
mhm. And coming up with, like, more and more excuses, or I mean, but honestly, some of the hardest times was when I would show the evidence and they'd be like, "Well,
It becomes more
you
about
know I
how
have a
you
problem."
found out than what their
Mhm.
behavior actually was.
There's
Well, what do
always
you mean? What do
deflection.
you mean? Were you going through my stuff? Were you going through
Yeah.
my phone? How did you find that? How do you know that? And then it became
Mhm.
about you
That I
becoming,
did the
how
thing
dare
that
you
was,
violate their
how dare you?
boundaries?
I mean, it's really hard. It's really, And
And
then,
then you
but
start to wonder if you really did something wrong. Oh, wow, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
right. Right. And the books out there, one of the best-selling books for loved ones of addicts is one where they encourage us to be kinder and develop more empathy. And I was like, no one asked me ever again to have more fucking empathy. Like, I don't, excuse my language, but like, yeah, my mom's gonna be mad about that. But I mean,
I wish I had a bleeper. Bleep.
I know, beep, sorry, beep. But it's just, what about me? And it's not trying to be like, it's all about me. It's not like that. It's that, what am I supposed to do with this when I'm like raising a small child too? And
Right.
like, how do I protect this child and from harm? Especially because there were many times, I guess, that I had no idea they were intoxicated when they had my child. Like, I didn't know because they're so skilled at it in the beginning, with cologne and changing clothes, hiding things, it's just
Altoids.
maddening. Altoids, But look, I came to it naturally because in the book, there's a picture of, it says, here, I'm going to show this really quick because it just really cracks me up, that I did. It's this picture right here, if you can see it okay.
I'm going to
So
you.
there we go. So this is a picture of somebody in a car backing up. It's late at night and it's like, who is that? What are they doing? And someone's stealing your car. So basically my sister took my parents' car to go to a dealer's house. And at 16, I was like, I'm going to go steal the car back. So I took my friend and we walked over there, jumped in the car and stole the car, drove back to my house, parked the car, but didn't put the garage door down. So somebody came looking for it. Yeah. So it's like, I put myself in insane situations because I was delusional. Like, I thought I could save her from it. I thought if I would do X, Y, and Z, it'll stop. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes no sense.
It makes 100%. It makes sense because as a teenager, you're thinking, what can I do to make this stop so that my family can go back to normal? I mean, when is the last time in your childhood that you remember? What age do you remember it being like, quote unquote, normal before this became the daily focus? And you talk about in the book, I mean, how you and your mom would sit in like a parking lot and like do stakeouts, to watch and make sure that nothing was like you were protecting her, which, when this is taking up your daily agenda after school, let's say, or your weekend days. I mean, when's the last time you remember having like a normal childhood? How old were you?
I would probably say like 9 or 10, 11, maybe, because there was like issues fighting us up before, like the addiction. So, but probably like things, maybe 13. I'll say 13 to be safe. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about, how hard this is on the siblings. There was just the two of you, two in the house. And how like the focus is being pulled from them and how that affects the childhood. And
yeah. I mean, I remember, I didn't write about this in the book, but I remember it was my first homecoming. So it would have been 9th grade. And I remember being at this party and somebody like referencing like, oh, don't you know what's up with your sister doing X, Y, and Z? And I remember being like, what? Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, before it all kind of like, came out. And my parents were trying to hide some of it from me because I remember going home and being like, someone said this, and I think that they were already onto it, but no one knew what to do exactly. Right. We didn't have the resources to put her in rehab. We didn't have, but really I had a lot of anger, and I'm working through that to this day because like repressed anger, because, when when I see the effects, like with my mom crying all the time over what has happened, like, but being like, what did I do to deserve this? Was I a bad parent? Am I, going through all of that? And I'm hearing it. I want to rage. I wanted to control it in some way,
Mary says, I remember as a young child how I would come home to find my mom passed out. I tried to get a bunch of coffee in her before anyone else got home. It never worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Mary. That breaks my heart.
Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, the ripple effects on the family are enormous. Something else I want to talk about is holidays. Holidays were always, the crazy time, right? I mean, how anybody who knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about.
I know, right? We don't even need to say anything. We're like
holidays.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Holidays became all not a,
Tell me about yours.
inducing
thing
for a lot of people. Talk a little bit about the overwhelm, because when I read that part of your book, that resonated with me as well.
The overwhelm. Yes.
What is the overwhelm?
The overwhelm is when you are just, it's like I couldn't find a description of what I was feeling, where I was just so deep. You're like deep in the trenches of it. You can't see what you're doing, like your part in it. Like you don't think that you can, it's like a tug of war. You don't think at a certain point that you can drop the rope and say, like, I'm not engaging in this. Like, I'm not going to be a part of this. The overwhelm is just before that, where you just like are deep in the trenches and you feel like your life is just overwhelmed with it all. When you don't see the light. I mean, and it's a scary place to be. And if you aren't, like, I feel lucky because, I have supportive friends and family, and I have friends that have dealt with siblings going through this too, and parents, thankfully, well, not thankfully, but like just so that they understood, because there is a difference between the ones that have dealt with addiction and people who haven't. They don't understand. It's just how complex it is. But thankfully they were there to support me, because I mean, it gets dark. I mean, people who, if you feel like if that person would end up overdosing and they end their life, the guilt, the shame, that knock on wood hasn't occurred. It still could. And it's scary if your mental health is not in the best place, like how you're going to handle that and the effects of it all.
Right. And if it's a family, dynamic, as in you are the child, right? And you have a parent who is an alcoholic or an addict, or you have a sibling and you're a child, and this is where you really have no choice. You can't leave, No. So you have to learn how to deal with it. And, the walking on eggshells and the never knowing who's going to walk through the door, never knowing when you go out with your family in public, what's going to happen, because how this person may behave. It's very, very, disconcerting for a child. And, sometimes the child becomes the parent. I got a great comment here from Shelley. Alcoholics drink to celebrate, drink when they're sad, when they're happy. There's always a reason. As children, it is so horrible.
It's horrible. Yep, there's always a reason.
I want to talk a little bit about grief, because I want to read a little paragraph from your book. And also, guys, the book is interactive. It's kind of like a workbook. Like there's exercises that you can do. And I think that's really great too, because, so many people don't have resources to, go to therapy or whatever. And I found that these exercises were really interesting. I'm just going to go to page 32, where you talk a little bit about grief and having had some personal experience with this, I'm going to say, at the outset, that there's nothing harder than grieving the loss of someone who is still alive. Grief at a funeral, at a wake, when somebody dies is one thing, but the grief of losing somebody who's still alive. And I love the exercise you have in the book, but I'm just going to read a little excerpt of your book, if you don't mind here.
Please do.
And it's titled, this section of the book is titled Insurmountable Grief. I felt like a widow. My husband, the person I knew before alcohol and drugs, is gone. He's simply gone. I was grieving the man I loved so effing much. At the same time, the addict that currently inhabits his body is still very much alive, and I know so because I witness it daily. I was experiencing the loss of the person that existed while being in a rage with the person that was inhabiting his body.
Mhm.
This situation and grief made me feel crazy, truly crazy. I'm mourning my lover, dismayed by the addiction and lies, while pushing myself to move forward for my son and myself because that's all I can do with it all. For once, I was able to recognize how hugely dissonant this is. The body of my person is still living, allowing it to be flooding on so many levels. This is the complexity of grief when loving an addict. And you guys can let me know in the chat if that's something that resonates with you. It is something that resonates with me, and it's tragic. And if you have, and this was a spouse for you, and if you have children with this person, it's not like you can just cut them out of your life.
No.
So you still have to maintain some sort of communication with them. So you still have to see them. You can't just really cut them out of your life. And if you don't, and it's just a relationship or, you know, like a significant other and you have no children together, it's just like trying to forget about this person that was such a part of your life and you're mourning them, but they're still alive.
Yeah, it makes me sad because it's like, I miss that person. Like, I miss him. He was a good person and he was so funny and so wonderful. And I've just had to come to terms with the fact that, you know, person's not coming back. I mean, even if he got clean and sober, it would take years, I think, for his brain to be repaired. And yeah, I grieve the loss of what was supposed to be the family I had envisioned. And just not knowing who this person is and the person that you like thinks was going to be your protector and somebody that you love so much ends up treating you so horribly. It's like an enemy almost. And it's like,
Right.
I just can't compute it in my mind. It
Yeah.
hurts. And that person that it's like a zombie. I mean, really, it's like the person that's living or that's in that body is not the person that I knew before, because that person before would never.
But sometimes, you know, when you're in the throes of it, right? And then you see glimmers of that person every so often surface and you're like, okay, wait, you know, they're still there. They're still there. Maybe if I just hang on a little longer, it'll change. And maybe they'll go back to the person that they used to be. And maybe everything's going to be fine. And I think that, you know, it's so hard to judge people in that situation. Like, well, why do they stay? Why do they stay? You know, and this goes for a lot of, you know, survivors of DV as well, because they're involved with people who are drinking or addicts and, you know, they get smacked around or whatever. And then they apologize. And then they think, well, you know, okay, maybe he's, you know, or she's really sorry. Like they're not going to do this again. And you know, maybe they see like glimmers of the person they used to be, just hoping and hoping that, you know, if I love them enough, they'll just stop. And if they see what's going to happen and I threaten to leave, or I threaten to take the kids away, or I threaten to, I don't know, tell their family, maybe they'll just stop.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard reality to come to.
Yeah.
To realize that you can't change this person. You can't force them to choose you over their next drink.
Exactly. And you know, I had a situation where people were judging me, like, why are you breaking up your family? You have a beautiful family. And I'm like, I'm knowing everything. And I'm like, I'm the one, because I'm making this choice. I'm being forced to make this choice. And when you have so much hope that they're going to get better, you really, you have to have so much strength and so much. I mean, it's like nearly impossible to make that hard of a decision and to say like, no more, like, I'm not going to subject myself to this anymore, but I will be here when you're ready to change. Like, putting your foot down is so hard because you are in a cycle of abuse with an addict. If they're making promises, if you see, you like go back and forth. It's like a roller coaster. Like one point they're doing well for a week and then they're not. And then you just are, your life is really dictated by their addiction. And it's just, you lose sight of who you are and like having any type of control in your own life.
Yeah, the roller coaster. Let's just talk about that endless roller coaster. It's really, 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 really good when it's good, and then it's really, really, really bad when it's not. And then it goes on and on and on. And eventually, like, you got to get off. You got to get off the roller coaster, because no matter what you do, even if you drive them to rehab and bring them in and walk them in and pay for the whole thing, no matter what you do, until they're ready to stop,
right?
There's nothing you can do, right?
Nothing. And that feels, and there's a lot of judgment because how you are told to handle people with addiction is counterintuitive, because it looks harsh to anybody else. You know what I mean? Like, if it was just like a regular person to be like, I'm not talking to you, you have to figure it out, come to me when you're better. Like, people will judge you and be like, well, that's really harsh. And like, not understanding that that's the only way, because they do have to hit rock bottom. Like, and if you stand in their way, they're not going to hit rock bottom if you keep negotiating, bargaining with them, enabling, until you say like, no more. And like, you don't have access to me if you're going to continue doing this, because I'm going to love myself. Like, you have to step aside. I say that in there. It's like, just step aside and like, let them. It's nothing that you want to do. You want to save them. You don't want to know. Like, I have gotten phone calls that I never have wanted to get, and I probably will in the future. And it's like, it's not for me to fix, though.
I think that's, so hard to do. It's so hard to do because you have this idea of what your life is going to be like and what your future with this person is going to be like. And they're supposed to be there for you forever. And they're supposed to be the one protecting you. And now all of a sudden you're the one who's doing everything with the kids, with the, everything, and it becomes, if you're married to this person, you're almost like being a single parent, because you're doing everything already anyway. And then they become like another child, right? That you have to take care of and manage. And, that,
and that's real attractive.
Oftentimes becomes the breaking point, right? Where it's like, I don't need another child. I don't need another child. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. This is not what I signed up for.
Totally. And what's hard, though, what makes it so hard to finally get to that point, is that it doesn't happen like that overnight. It's gradual, where like, we would have a night where there was binge drinking out of proportion and something would happen. And then there would be 8 months that would go by and everything was fine. So I thought, oh, that was just a fluke. That's what I was hoping always. Oh, that's just like, it was a one-off.
That's the good time. You're up at the top of the cyclone.
Totally. And then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, the time between. And then it becomes daily that your life is chaotic. And
I really think for some people there just is no rock bottom. I think, as we said, or maybe we didn't even say yet, but this knows no economic boundaries. This knows no racial boundaries, no ethnical no religious boundaries. This affects everyone. It doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have. It doesn't matter where you live. It crosses all classes. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And, sometimes for some people, there is no rock bottom. And, high functioning alcoholic is an oxymoron.
I know, right?
Just because you have a really good job and you make a lot of money and you're like, high functioning alcoholic is still an alcoholic or an addict. It doesn't make you a better alcoholic or addict because you happen to have a job and are able to keep it and happen to make money. The effects on the family and the social dynamics are the same.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think about, I remember being so dumbfounded whenever I heard one person tell me what was their rock bottom, or like what made them stop. And it was so little compared to what, like, it just wasn't, nothing horrible had to happen when I had had a couple significant, like, totaling a car, crashing into a light pole, like, you know what I mean? Like, some
Right,
serious
right.
things going on. Um, and to have that wake-up call. I mean, and I have a friend of mine who, is clean and sober, and for quite a while after just having a short like, stint of it, and I just was like, "How are you?" You know what I mean? Like, everybody's, it's hard because there are some people that don't hit rock bottom and they remain this way for the rest of their life, and there's some that can bounce out quickly
Right.
and see it. And but the thing for everybody to know is, like, it's not your duty to hold out to wait for them to change. It's a waste of time. It's really, I wish I would have given myself that grace, and, like, and knowing that it's okay. Like, you don't have to be a fixer, but because of my childhood experience, I felt like you do everything that you can. You run yourself into the ground to help this other person. Like, being selfless was uh, something to strive toward when it's not.
Yeah, which is why
It's not.
self-care and self-love is so important, which I want to get into
Mhm,
next. Let's
mhm.
just go to some of the comments here because there's some really good comments.
Okay.
Michael Allen says self-centeredness is the hallmark of every boozer. But no, it's true
It's so
because you think,
true.
why is it like,
Yeah.
why can't they just love me more? Why can't they love the family more? Why are they lying about where they're going and what they're doing when all they're really doing is going out there to drink by themselves somewhere?
Mhm.
But you think, like, how could that even be possible? There must be something else going on here.
Right.
But really, it's all about that next drink, that next fix, and nothing else matters. Nothing
No,
else matters.
nothing,
Magic
nothing.
Mary says nothing works until the person wants to help themselves. Yep.
Yep.
She says also, I grew up with an alcoholic mother and father and became an alcoholic myself. 30 years sober now.
Oh my
Congratulations,
gosh,
Mary.
yes,
You
congrats,
broke the
Mary.
cycle. That is
Yes,
amazing.
that's amazing, that takes so much, that's so wonderful.
Wendy, one of my mods. Hi, Wendy. Thanks for coming today. I'm sure if I just, I don't know, maybe love them, that's supposed to say, they will understand and care enough, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it becomes a cycle of like, why am I not doing enough? Why can't I make it stop?
Why can't, I'm a therapist with substance abuse, why am I not, like, if I'm the person that people come to, like, why can't I
Yeah,
save
because
him?
it's like an equal opportunity,
Right.
disorder, like, it's nobody's immune.
No one's
Nobody is
immune.
immune from being in
No.
the circle of addiction,
Mhm.
of these ripple effects are enormous. Jane says, "Growing up in a household where addiction is present is so hard. My brother had drug issues when I was around 5. I'm 22 now, and I don't know where he is or whether he's dead or
Oh
alive." Oh
god,
my god, I'm so sorry
I'm
to hear
so
that.
sorry.
Heather, it's truly like living in a horror movie and absolutely no control to stop it or know what to do. And you can't tell anyone because they don't understand. And I felt so ashamed.
So shame, so much shame.
So much shame, so much guilt. Who's going to understand? I mean, especially, and I don't know if Heather, this was when you were a child or an adult, but Meredith, like you were saying earlier, people were telling you, like, why can't you just stay in it? You can't break up your family.
Mhm.
I think the generation above us, I
Yeah,
don't know if these were older people that were, like your
they were.
parents' age saying this to you.
Mhm.
Um,
Not
you,
parents, by the way, they were very
like, let's say our
yeah.
parents' generation.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe if there's anybody in the chat who's of that generation, I'm going to say, like, the 68 plus or the 70 plus,
Mhm.
people stayed in it for the kids.
Mhm. Yeah.
People stayed in it for the families.
Mhm.
They didn't want to break up families, and it was a lot
Right.
different. It was kind of like, just deal with it. This is just the
Right.
way it is. You're going to deal with it. We're not going to break up the family. A divorce was very embarrassing.
Mhm.
It was very embarrassing for the family. And I
Right.
feel like maybe my generation, because I'm a lot older than you, but my generation was the first generation that was like, F this, like, I'm not sticking
Mhm.
around. I have the ability to, protect my kids, to put an end to this. And, maybe I don't want
Yes.
my kids growing up in this kind of a dynamic.
Right. Right. And I mean, and I have a child with special needs, and he, was he still struggles with speech. I mean, he's come so far, but everybody would tell me, like, once I made this decision and the tension wasn't in the house, because I protected him from seeing a lot and hearing a lot, but it's still, kids are smart. They're so
Yes.
smart, and they can pick up on your emotions, and I just think his speech started improving. Like, people were just like, "Wow, he's like a thriving now." And
Wow.
and I think it's just because the environment, it was affecting him without, you can try to hide it as much as you think, but, like, they're just too smart. They
Yeah, and
feel
they can
it.
pick up
They
on
can
your
feel
emotions
it.
too. And, when I was reading your book and you would talk
Mhm.
about how, after your ex-husband was gone and, the I don't know, the divot, like,
Pivot.
in your
Mhm.
mattress where you would sleep, and how you never moved to the other side of the bed or even to the middle of the bed,
Mhm.
and how, you would cry in the bathroom because your son was in bed with you and he was just a little baby, and, you're trying to hide it from it's just heartbreaking, and I think so many people can relate to that. And
Mhm.
Mystique, I'm so sorry about this. 2 months ago, her brother died of an overdose at 43. He was such a loving man with a heart of gold and not a mean bone in his body. My heart is broken and it hurts for his 11-year-old son.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and so many of these overdoses, they're not intentional. These are not people
Mhm.
who are trying to unalive themselves, as we say on YouTube,
Mhm.
and I'm so sorry, Mystique, that that happened to you,
I'm
and
so
prayers out
sorry.
to you and your family and to
Yeah.
his child. Rochella was another moderator. Thanks, Rochella. It's a bit like DV. They keep thinking things will change until it's too late. Very sad. Yeah, and a lot of times DV and addiction go
Mhm.
hand in hand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then Wagner says, we keep hurting and torturing ourselves for them, and they still effing their bodies up and messing with our heart and our minds at the same time. We get to a time when we realize we can't anymore.
Yeah. 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 And my hope is that someone will pick this up. I mean, I wish I had this when I was a teenager. I wish I had this even just a couple of years ago. I mean, my hope is that someone will read this and not feel alone, and see themselves in it, and have actual tools, and do these exercises, because sometimes I will read a book and I'll be like, and it'll feel very profound, and then, like, 2 days later I'm like, wait, now what, like, what was that about? Like, how do I use this new knowledge, and that's why I wanted to make sure that it was self-help, like it had real things that you do to help heal yourself and come to the realization, or not the realization, but come to a place where you can decide what you actually want to do. Are you at the point where you need to walk away? Then, and you
And
have
that's
ways.
okay. And that's
That's
okay to
okay.
walk away,
Yes.
that someone's giving you permission, that a therapist is giving you permission
Mhm.
to walk away, because sometimes that's all you can do,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you have to have sometimes people think they need permission to put themselves first.
Oh, I did. Definitely. Definitely. I wish I would have known, like, it would have been okay when it first started to walk away. But I mean, it is a process, but I definitely got subjected myself to so much more trauma, that because I thought I had to stay, and I was just like, what does that say about me? Am I a
Right, I'm
bad
giving
person?
up. Why am I'm a quitter,
I'm a
right?
quitter. I mean, I had an old man that we lived by, um, down the street the other day, ran into me and he was like, "How is he?" And I was like, "Oh, not good." Like, and gave just like a vague debrief, and he was like, "You have to help him. You have to." And I was just like, "Okay, no, I don't. Like, it's not my problem anymore. I got to help this child and myself."
Right.
Because when one addict is going down and choosing all this stuff, I was like, my son deserves at least one healthy parent. And right now, we're both, even though I'm not dealing with an addiction. I'm so consumed with your shit that I'm not being the best person that I can be and mother I can be and who I want to show him, you
Yeah.
know?
And the best version of myself.
Yeah. And I was angry because I feel like it stole some times in his younger years where my son should have gotten more of the focus,
Of
you know?
course.
It's like, how dare you?
And that's, there's a lot of
Yeah,
anger. And
a
so the
lot.
next passage that I want to read is where you talk about the blame game, and about by saying it's all your fault. I said he controlled the situation. So let me get a second to pull this up here. I want to read this to you guys and let me know if it resonates with you, like it resonated with me. And oh, that's you. Hold on. Hello. I'll go solo, give you a chance to get a drink or take a break for a second.
Okay,
It's a heavy topic, I know, you guys, but it's
very
so important to talk about. So in her book, Meredith talks about the blame game. And she says, by saying it's all your fault, I said he controlled the situation and took my control away from me. I had every right to feel this way because his actions were very hurtful and affected my life. But putting an all-encompassing blanket statement like it's all your fault felt self-serving and gluttonous. It distracted me from my options to change and evolve, kind of gave me an excuse not to evolve. I found myself in a blame spiral, and this created deep bubbles of sadness and rage. I would often visualize a witch with a big wart on her nose, leaning over her boiling pot, watching the bubbles with wide eyes, whispering, "Yes, yes," when the bubbles got bigger. Whenever I opened my mouth, I was negative, which I hated, but blaming him was habitual and what I knew. It was like a muscle I exercised every day until it became massive. It was a steady flex, a predictable pattern, and I settled into that comfy spot for a while, but it was hurting me. And then you go into experiential avoidance, which I found so interesting, which is when a person continually avoids certain feelings, thoughts, or memories that will cause distress. And, so many of us do that. Don't so many of us try not to think about it because of the discomfort that it causes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, you don't want to go there, you want to avoid as much as possible. I also think about, there was another part in the book where I'm blanking all of a sudden. See, this is I talk about this in the book, actually, chronic stress.
Yes.
It is like you've got a million windows open on your computer. And so like the computer starts running really slowly and you've got to like X out some of those windows so that you can actually focus. Because I feel like when you love an addict, you constantly are like thinking about a million different scenarios and so consumed with it that it really, chronic stress does affect your brain so much. And I still feel like I don't think that it's like necessarily disassociation, but there's like this numbness that your body will do. Sometimes it's disassociating, but like that your body will do, it will have to slow down. It's got to slow your brain down in order to cope with how it feels and the memories of it. I feel like it right now, like I'm like having to protect myself in a way mentally because it's just like, it was so awful.
So
and
painful.
And you don't know when you're going to get out of it and how it's going to look. But I have to say, like, doing the videos and writing this book really saved me. Like, I don't know. It was like finding my own identity and helping myself. And it's just awesome that I can help others now. Like, that feels very meant to be, but to go through the pain that it took to get there, I don't know. It was all, it's,
right. And now that you wrote the book, you have to keep talking about it.
I know, right? I'm like,
when we really wanted to do this to help people, but now I have to keep reliving it and talking about it. And it's going to bring back the whole cycle of pain.
Yes.
Rose Elliott says holidays, graduations, weddings. Yeah, going back to the holiday comment. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
Oh, no. It makes me want to bring up Taylor because, I think about what Taylor says with her writing is that when she gets it out there, people listen to it and it takes on its own meaning for them. And so it just changes for her and it's healing. So I do feel like when I start to hear more of people's experiences and how after they read the book or their experiences about loving an addict, it does help me in a lot of ways, you know? I mean, so I feel like this book is going to be healing and won't be as hard to talk about as I talk about it more, because before I came on here, I was nervous because I was telling Melanie, like, this is the first time I'm like really talking about it. And it's always safer for it to be in a book and words and like separate from me. But it's like,
you know, I think we have to take away like the shame of talking about it. And especially you and I have talked about this a lot, about how, you know, one of our goals is to try and help these younger generation of women, the teenagers, the millennials, like learn how to deal with this and how to cope with this, because nobody taught us what to do. There were no resources like this. This should be taught in schools. You know, mindfulness should be taught in schools. Coping mechanisms need to be taught in schools. These are such important life skills to have that unless you've been in therapy, you're not going to know about DBT. You're not going to know to go grab an ice cube and hold onto it if you're feeling discomfort, because the pain of holding that ice cube in your hand and gripping it will distract you from whatever emotional pain or impulsive thoughts you're having.
Yeah. I mean, one of my biggest things I talk about in the book was like breaking stuff. I mean, I legit
talk about that. That was cool.
I mean, I come from a long line of women who like to demolish things. But I think that it is a therapeutic technique that, well, I first was, when I was at OSU, I ran, it's called a SAFE group, Strong Able Females Expressing. And so it was a lot of expressive arts, which I talk about in here. But one of the things was to shatter something. Like there's something about labeling on something, what it is, what it represents, and just seeing it shatter. It's like, because you know why? I think it's because you actually have control to break something if you want to, or to say, or to express your anger in that way. We're not always given that opportunity.
Right.
You know, and I know this affects all genders, but for women, being angry is not no one likes women to be angry.
One of your chapters is called "Don't Be a Bitter Bitch."
Don't be a bitter bitch. Yeah, because I was. I mean, when I was just in Trader Joe's and I saw these people laughing and like like making like conversation and like jokes, and I was like, what are you so fucking happy about? Like I just became like bah humbug, just I don't know, just because of addiction pulling me down. So you know what I mean? It's like it took me under too.
Yeah, you feel like you're drowning and you just can't get up. But the way that you talked about you and your mom going out and taking a bunch of old glass vases and throwing them at a brick wall and smashing them, you know, and how good you felt when you were done, and how these, what do they call these rooms where you can go and pay actually to go in a room? Rage rooms where you can go smash computers and stuff with sledgehammers. And I mean, I guess that's why they're popular. I don't know where there's
bars that have it too in the city. There's a break bar. So you go, you have specific kind of glasses that you can drink your beer or your wine or mixed drink. And then they have a little area in the back that you just get to like chuck it against the wall.
I'm going to say that alcohol and sledgehammers probably are not a good combination as an attorney and a liability advisor. I'd say no, don't.
So no to break bar, yes to rage room, yes to rage room, because rage room, you get all the protective gear on, you have a whole, but like to be able to like smash computers and all that. It's just,
as a side note, I don't really like those hatchet throwing places either, because they're like these bars where you can go and they give you hatchets that you throw at a target. It's like darts, but with a hatchet where you can go. They have them in Brooklyn. They have them and they're very popular. And I'm thinking these people are all drinking. They've got a hatchet in there. Like, what? Not a great idea. Not a great idea. Yeah. So that's great advice. I remember when my kids were little, because, you know, little kids have problems, you know, regulating their emotions and stuff. And if they were really angry, I'd bring a pillow and I'd say, all right, let's punch this pillow.
Punch the pillow,
you know, and I would have them punch in the pillow until they were tired and we were laughing about it, you know, because when you're a little kid, there's so much you can't control that, you know, if you can just get it out somehow. You know, and I have 5 kids, so we did
I
a lot
mean,
of pillow punching and it worked.
jeez, I give you so much. I mean, one, I have one, and I'm like, I do not know 5. It's so incredible. Another good one is, you know, whenever recycling comes up, we have to break down all the boxes. And so just stomping the shit out of like cardboard boxes
Oh,
feels
cardboard
really good.
boxes. Oh, yeah,
Yes.
that's a great idea too.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at a comment from Mary Lynn. I've been listening to this. I'm someone that was abused for over 35 years. I was afraid to leave. He was going to come find me and kill me. I stayed because I was scared. Yes. Yes, there was a whole hashtag movement why I stayed. And I don't
Mhm.
think that we can ever judge someone for staying. And I think, and you and I have talked about this too,
Yeah.
about doing a show on exit plans. And if you do plan to leave someone who's abusive, or even someone who's not, that you think may be
Mhm.
abusive or drunk, how it's
Mm.
so important to have an exit plan in place, and what to do and where to go and what to pack and to have things ready. And I'm really sorry, Marilyn, that
Yeah.
happened to you. That's really horrifying, and I feel you.
It's
Peter
awful.
Pranzo, who is retired law enforcement, says, sadly, alcohol abuse was always deeply entrenched in law enforcement, a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
It was treated for those who came forward or for those who got jammed up. Treatment programs available. Yes. And you
Yes.
know, there are so many lawyers that are
Oh,
alcoholics,
yeah.
so many law enforcement doctors. Um,
Mhm.
it knows no professional boundaries
That's
either.
right.
And
Yes.
from covering so many true crime stories and watching interviews with people who are arrested or people who are testifying, so many
Mhm.
people don't become clean until they're in prison,
I believe that.
right? Because
Yeah.
they commit a crime or they get busted and now they're in prison, and they have to, which
Mhm.
is really kind of sad too.
Yeah.
Um, Oh, this is kind of funny, Michael Allen. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Daily affirmations from Stuart Salt. That is a Saturday Night Live reference for those of you who don't know it. We may be
Yeah,
dating
yeah.
ourselves, Michael Allen, but that is a good one. Yes. And this is interesting. This is a question that I have for you, but Okie dokie
Mhm.
going to bring it here. So,
Mhm.
what portion of the addicts do you suppose are also narcissistic, disordered, sociopaths, psychopaths, curious? And I don't find this to be an offensive question at all, because I have often wondered
Mm.
myself, as I got into the rabbit hole of um, investigating a narcissistic personality disorder
Yeah.
on Instagram, which now I am an expert on. I find that alcoholics and or addicts share so many
They
qualities
do. Mhm.
with the narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes. Yes. It is very sometimes hard to tease it apart, and I think that's where I got stuck for a very long time. Um, that it's actually I've already written another book, and it's darker, and it's not, it's about really more that came after this one. And that is kind of what I'm trying to do, is parse through, like, were there's were these traits going on before that I didn't pick up on? Am I choosing to paint them in this, like, how they were in the past? Or but I do believe that addiction and drug abuse can change the brain to a point where it does make them, I mean, I think more narcissistic, but the psychopathic, that stuff for sure. I mean, and there is drug abuse that can lead to disorders like that, like can affect
Yeah,
your
and
brain in that
but the lines are kind of blurred,
they're
right?
so
Because like
blurred.
somebody said earlier, one of the comments that we put up is that it's a very self-centered, you know,
Mhm.
nothing is more important than the next drink or the next fix, or, you know, my family doesn't count. It's all about me, 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 which is also the way narcissistic people think.
Exactly.
But I think the difference maybe is that narcissists just don't care. And I think that the addict deep down somewhere cares. It's just an uncontrollable thing that they have no power of, and that eventually their brain becomes so, you know, like wet brain is really a thing,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
numb, that it's just you know, and there are also physical ramifications for an addict or
Yes.
alcoholic that tries to stop. So
Mhm.
oftentimes they will
Yeah.
start drinking because they don't want to feel those horrible withdrawal
The
symptoms,
shakes
right? Or
and
take another pill.
nausea. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many, I mean, at least in my case, the self-centeredness and then the lack of remorse for what they were doing. There's something. I just don't think that all addicts are totally the same. Like there's a lot of the same themes. But think about that woman who commented earlier. She was like, there wasn't a mean bone in his body. I think there are those people that they become addicted, and it doesn't mean that they're horrible and awful. It's like, no, it's usually a result of some type of trauma.
Mhm.
Why you use, but there is something about narcissists and psychopaths that get a thrill out of attention. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's getting the attention and knowing stuff that somebody else doesn't know. And so think about why alcohol or drug use, you have to be sneaky. You like there's a thrill in acquiring it and keeping it from the other person. Like they get some kind of like sick thrill from it. Like to doing
Right.
this to someone else and torturing them and ruining their life. Like there's something a little entertaining for them.
For the true narcissist or true
Mhm. True. Yes.
sociopath or psychopath, and I don't think that the addict gets the pleasure out of
Right.
hurting people around them at all. It's just an inevitable effect of,
Mhm.
the self-centeredness of
Yes.
the disorder and of the
Yeah.
addiction. Um,
Psychopathic people for sure. Like they do like and I'm wondering right now still just being like, what was I just involved in? Because it just amplified like with you know, um the potential threat of violence and having to get law enforcement involved and things like
yeah,
that, and things I never imagined. But you kind of don't know. You're like, you can't trust the words coming out. You have to go by the behaviors, the actions that have happened to make
right.
decisions by, because sometimes I mean, most narcissists are very charismatic and people enjoy them and love them. And I think that that's why a lot of people were like, "Why would you break up the family?" Because it's like, "He looks amazing. He seems great." It's like, "No, no, no, no. There's a whole other side to this." A lot of times it's just hidden and it's hard to live through.
Right, and
And
that's why so many people are like, you start to feel like the crazy one, I think, after a
mhm,
while.
mhm.
Rose Elliott says you did right by your son, Mare.
Thank you. That means so much. You have no idea. Like, it's just I know that now. I know it, but I had a lot of it was hard,
It's
very
hard,
hard.
and it's
Yeah.
still hard. Like,
Still
when does it ever get easy, you know? I mean, 10 years from now, you'll write a book and
mm,
I don't know, does it get easier? I don't know. Maybe you don't become so obsessed with it after a while, once the person's not in your house, in your day-to-day, and you're not constantly walking on
yeah,
eggshells and constantly managing their addiction and constantly
right.
making excuses or digging them out of the trouble that they get themselves into by fixing everything, because so many of us have that, broken bird syndrome, like, oh, I can
Yes.
help him, I can fix him or her.
Uh-huh.
I can do it, I can be the one to do it because I'm going to be different than all the rest of the ones that couldn't.
Right, and I need to build I think for me, the one of the biggest effects, I think, is gonna happen whenever I finally do, like, move on in a sense, like, whenever like, I don't know how I'm gonna really trust someone to come into my life in, like, a real way and like a partner, because
Yeah.
I've had to protect my son so much that I mean, the person has it's gonna have to be just phenomenal, but it will take a lot of time to, like, feel, because I thought I had it covered and I didn't. But life is unpredictable. But I think the ripple effects of the trauma is distrust and fear in yourself and your
Yes.
own judgment that will
Right, and then you
continue
become
on.
hyper vigilant, and
Exactly.
it's how are you ever gonna trust anybody? And also when you're in a
Mhm.
relationship with that kind of a person, not a parent or a sibling or child, but when you're in a romantic relationship with that kind of a person, I think it's difficult in a different way because, it's
Mhm.
like now your trust is broken and that roller coaster that we were talking about, it's really, really good and that's really, really bad. In a
Yes.
twisted way, it's exciting, so if
Yeah.
you get into a normal relationship and it's normal, what is normal if you've been living with these people around you your whole entire life,
Right.
it feels boring. And then you're like, oh, well, this is just boring. Like I want that thrill, I want that bad boy and
Exactly.
that or that bad girl or that it's more exciting.
Yeah.
You don't know what
Because
your normal has shifted. You don't know what normal is anymore.
yeah, and I mean, I do know a really nice person, a male that he would really, really great person. But it's just, it doesn't, I always feel like it should be more work. Like, it's weird that I'm like, wait, that almost makes me more uneasy. That's the trauma, the effects of it, because it's like, wait, you're being kind and sweet. Like, why? Do you have
What's
a
wrong with
reason?
you?
What's wrong with you? Like, what's going on? What are you gonna, what's actually going on? When it's like, no, people can actually be genuinely kind and want to be loving toward you without a motive, you know?
Yeah, that's a really,
It's gonna be
really, really
hard.
real thing. Tell me in the chat if you can relate to that because yeah, that's a really and Rose again, Rose is coming in with all the good comments.
Yeah.
Excitement is overrated.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah. Hell
and
yeah.
I think, you're
Yes.
kind of programmed from a young age into believing that, love is this thing that hits you like a
Mhm.
lightning bolt and you get the chills and the shivers and maybe it's not maybe love is patient, love is kind.
Fine.
It's not this
Yeah.
thing that hits you like a
No,
ton of bricks. And I think that wow, there's so
no,
much
it
to
is
unpack here.
so overrated. I agree. I want chill. But I'm saying I'm not even comfortable with the opposite yet. Like, so
Yeah,
I know I'm
yes,
not
with the
there yet
normal.
with normal. I need to really, I just have, it's just like more work to be done because this is just, I mean, we're all a work in progress, right? But it's just the lasting effects of it.
So what
You know?
advice would you give to someone who's watching that is in a situation like this right now? I mean, I'm sure the advice would be different whether it's a parent
Yeah,
or a sicko or a child.
it's not your fault. It is not yours to figure out. It's not your role to save them. It is not for you to even take on. Like, step aside and let them deal with the consequences of their actions. And you can be loving about it. Like, I love you so much that I believe that you can change. I truly believe that you can get your life better. But until you're ready to do that, I'm going to step aside and I'm going to take care of myself and choose to not be in your life. But I'll be here when you want to do the work. But I love you enough to no longer enable you. That's the advice I would give.
And that's a very, very hard place for so many people to get to, because there's this fantasy that we have, of how we want our life to go and how we want it to be. And like coming to the reality that that's never going to happen is sad and disconcerting. I'm going to go to some questions. If you guys have any questions, put hashtag Q. Just put hashtag Q and we'll come to your questions. I have some starred comments here that we can look at and then we'll go to final thoughts.
Right.
And if there's anything else you want to say in closing, think about it. Mercina Lady, addiction doesn't discriminate. I started off in Codependence Anonymous to Al-Anon and now AA. It's saved my life. Yep.
Yeah. I do want to say Al-Anon was great for me. I talk about it in the book when I found out that someone was, loved an addict and was going to Al-Anon and then running an Al-Anon group. And I was just like, wait, what? I thought Al-Anon was for, I just had a judgment in my mind. Like, what I saw in my mind isn't the reality of people that are in Al-Anon. And I also was just kind of like, why would you want to be in Al-Anon? Why do we have to talk about them? And it's like, no. Al-Anon, Nar-Anon, it's a place where you get to talk about yourself because the addict takes up so much of your life and the focus is on them. So if anybody, is struggling, I would highly recommend that you check out Al-Anon and Nar-Anon too.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to walk away. It's hard to say, I'm not going to be here for you anymore because I think, if you're involved in a relationship like this, you're a kind person, right? Because you're trying, you want to help, but you have to come to the realization that you can't help.
Right.
I think by helping, you're just enabling the person to spiral deeper and deeper into the addiction because they know there's never going to be any consequences for them.
That's right.
Darlene says, my family was ruined by my husband becoming an addict. It's a nightmare. I'm sorry, Darlene. I'm sorry. It is a nightmare. Heather, my sister expected me to stop my husband's drinking and I should be doing more. She became overbearing, so I hid things that were happening so she wouldn't add more stress to my life. She found out in the end.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's just like where the attention goes. Like we're actually victims in this circumstance. Like we're victims to their addiction and what the effects of it. And yet we're also expected to help them and take it on. Yeah. And then the people that expect that out of you, you push them away even more. And then that furthers the isolation.
Right.
I mean, your sister, sorry, but she should have been a lot more supportive.
And that's the thing. People who haven't been through it don't understand. And there comes a point where it's almost embarrassing to talk about. Like if you're relaying a story to your best friend or you want to tell your best friend something, but by telling that story, you feel embarrassed that you allowed this story or this event to even happen. It's a very isolating thing.
Absolutely.
Like you're embarrassed to even tell anybody what happened. Yeah. Mary says, excellent advice. Donna Marie says, I like that, Meredith. Thank you, Donna Marie. Another one of my amazing moderators. A lot of people are talking about God and everything is possible with God. If we trust in him, all can be mended. Oh, I see what you did there. Mend with Mare. That was
thank you
on your channel, I think.
But we have to, you have to lean into whatever works for you, your spirituality, religion, my book encourages that, like finding out like what works for you and that, and you can mend yourself with that support. So yes.
Yeah. And, self-care is important. And it's not something I think so many people feel guilty about that. Yeah. You have kids, you have, a lot of us are in a generation where we're taking care of both our parents and our children, and you want to take care of like your sicko, if that's the person in your life who's the addict or alcoholic. And it's like, you feel that taking care of yourself is like this, you feel guilty about it almost.
Yeah. Yeah. How dare you? I would feel so much guilt, but I mean, it just wore me down. I mean, to the point where, I had to just finally hire a babysitter if I could like make myself go to class doing something that I like, get
a massage, take a bath, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
And it's so important to take the time to do that.
I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Rose says, Melanie, I found your channel a couple days ago when I saw that Mare was coming here for this live stream. Thanks, Mare. Great conversation.
Oh, Rose.
All right. So we've been here for about an hour and a half. If anybody, hour and a half, I'm not even sure what time we started because this has been such an engrossing conversation for me.
Yes, me too.
And for everyone here who's watching, please feel free to share out the video. I'm going to go to you, Meredith, to see if you have any final thoughts.
Final thoughts are, you are not alone and all of your feelings are valid, and get support by please pre-order the book. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I think it's like all places now. It comes out next Friday. Final thoughts are that you can get through this. Like, I wish I had someone telling me that over and like, you will get through this. You will get through this because it just can get so dark. So just know that you're not alone. Share this with anyone that is going through this or you suspect is, because it kind of starts out, with a little quiz, like, you kind of suspect that there's something going on, but you're not quite sure, to where you like know and you like want them to get help. So there's a range that people can relate to in this book. So I hope that that you can get through this, and that even though I don't know you, I love you very much. And if you've had this experience, like, you don't have to, you can set boundaries, loving boundaries for yourself.
Yeah. It's a great how-to guide. I think that so many people are going to find so much comfort from it and so much validation from it and so much, of a plan, what to do, how to do it. And like Rochella says here, if I could touch, I have to say, it's so sad how so many here in the chat besides Meredith are suffering with the same issues. Prayers for everyone. Yeah. And I think that, thank you, Jane. Wonderful live.
Thanks.
And when you'll see, people who are on the replay crew, because there will be a lot. This was a very intimate conversation today because I know there was a lot of breaking news going on. So there will be a lot in the replay crew. And Meredith, you'll see when you go back to read the comments how many people this will resonate with. And hopefully you were able to help someone today, and your book will be able to help so many people. And if everyone would just, while we're here, hit the thumbs up. If you are not already subscribed, just go hit that subscribe button below. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit the bell so you can see the notifications for when I go live. If you're not getting notifications, it may be because you don't have the all notifications bell on. So make sure you do that. Make sure you go subscribe to Meredith's channel, and also hit the bell on her channel to get the notifications. The pre-order link for the book is below. Thank you all so much for coming to spend this very, very busy Friday afternoon with us. We hope that what we had to talk about resonated with you. You can also feel free, if you did not want to participate in the chat, perhaps you were shy or embarrassed, to leave your questions in the comments, and we promise we will get to them. Just be classy. No attacking me or my guests or anybody else in the comments, because they will be deleted. So guide your actions accordingly. Everyone have an amazing weekend. I'm going to catch up with you all on the whole Ruby Frankie, Jody Hildebrandt case tomorrow. We have to do a deep dive into that. But for now, love you guys. Thank you to my moderators, and thanks for everybody for watching today.
Thank you. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you so much.
Hang on for one sec. All right, guys. Good night.